Well, hello, Mandy. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on today.
You bet. I am super excited to have this conversation with you, and I'm super excited about your new book. But before we get into talking about all of that, for the moms out there who may not know who you are or they don't follow your super fun Instagram account, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and your homeschooling?
Sure, absolutely. I'm Mandy Davis. I'm best known probably as the former school principal turned homeschool mom. Three kids that are on this beautiful journey with us. My youngest is 4, and my middle is my powerhouse 12-year-old, and my oldest is 14 in her first year of high school. So I'm definitely juggling toddler, tween, teen, but it's been wonderful. We moved actually this past year back to the Midwest, to my hometown, and left the homestead life out in the Pacific Northwest, and a lot of um, a lot of pressures we were feeling uh, to create one kind of homeschool and to do what we thought would be maybe really beautifully fit for another family, but just wasn't for us. So we have really just taken this past year to reset and regroup and really develop the life and the homeschool that we need for our family.
I love that. And that is why I love your new book, A Homeschool Bible, because no matter where the parent is or the mom is, you lay it out so beautifully as to all of these different options, all of these different things. And I think that's why you call it the Bible, because they really don't need anything else because you actually give them all of that in the book. So, and I love that you are now you have a teen and
Mm.
that, yeah, so you're doing the high school thing. And also, is this like your third, fourth year? How many years have you been homeschooling?
Consecutively, since I've left now, we are going to be going into year 4.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is about the time, year three, you get your sea legs, you kind of, you know what you're doing, you kind of get a feel for what your family needs. And I
Mhm.
love how that is mapping out with your story. You guys realize, yes, this over here is perfect for maybe other homeschooling families, but not ours. And so you're forging a new path. So that's awesome. All right, so let's get into again, congrats on your new book for the moms out
Thank
there.
you.
It's called The Homeschool Bible, Everything You Need to Build a Thriving Home Education. I always love the subtitles. They just say so much. And I'm excited to talk with you about it. So let's talk to the moms out there who are thinking about bringing their kids home, but also to the moms out there who are already homeschooling, but it's this time of the year where they might be thinking, do I need to put them back into the school system? So I want to talk to both of those moms today. And you have, like you said, a unique perspective since you were once a public school principal. And so there's now, don't get me wrong, there are so many talented, well-meaning, awesome teachers out there. So it's not them. I really feel like it's more of the system. So I want to focus more on that today, not those beautiful teachers who are just doing the best that they can.
Absolutely.
So let's start. So, question one, as a former school principal, you have had front row seats to the evolving educational landscape. And I have to admit, the educational landscape today is completely different from when I was a classroom teacher just 30 years ago. I mean, it is just completely different, but you have had this front row seat. So, what are some of the major, let's just say it, flaws in the traditional educational system that you've witnessed? And what are some of the reasons why you chose as a principal, to home educate your family?
Sure. I'm going to go back in time just a
Mhm.
bit. I would say I went through the public school system myself. And I would say on paper, I was the most ideal student. In fact, I did what would look like very well in school, but school was not good for me. So I struggled a lot with bullying and later anxiety. And coming into my later teen years, I just had this drive to become an educator
Mhm.
and be able to reach these children similar to myself who felt maybe on the outside of the majority of their waking hours in the day. Because a common question that I would ask was, where were all the adults? As I was going through struggle points, where were the adults? And to no fault of their own, managing 25 to, I've seen classrooms up to past 35 in elementary students to one adult. It's just not possible. So, um, I'll get back to that later, but that kind of started my dream to become an educator. And once I was in the classroom, I just so quickly learned how this was a job. And in order to be executing my job, in order to be carrying all my kids somewhere in the middle and passing state exams and meeting with parents and adhering to administrative rules, I didn't have the time or capacity or the freedom to do my goal, which was to reach all of the kids.
Mhm.
And that's what kind of got me on the journey to administration. I started to think maybe from an even higher vantage point, I could have the bigger impact. Okay, so as a teacher, there were a lot of rules. It's not a teacher who doesn't care. It's a teacher who has so many rules pressed down on them and so many tasks through the day and so many needs. You just can't do it all.
Mhm.
Becoming a principal and at my girls' school, um, I was not even able to impact their education and change the rules in their classroom. I had extreme levels of stress because I was managing and holding up so much more at this time. And as I knew, and my husband and I would talk and pray and talk more over, can you stay in this role?
Mhm.
When we knew that I needed to leave, we also knew we couldn't leave our kids in the environment that I was calling toxic and heavy. And this wasn't something that I could leave them behind in. So there's a lot happening in classrooms and schools today. Um, and I talk a lot on my platforms about how the voices that should be mattering most, the kids, the families, are not being heard.
Mhm.
They're not impacting systemic rules that are happening. Really, as both an educator and school principal, my voice didn't matter all that much either
Wow.
to make an impact. So we're getting policies and curriculum and rules and red tape down from districts, from politicians, from policymakers, and they're directly impacting classrooms while they're not the ones experiencing these classrooms and the stress and the, what is called so often rigor. So pacing continues to speed up. And post COVID, we saw, a decline across the board. And so to fix that, we need to speed up. Everything seems to be paced at just this race that nobody wants to be running, and quite frankly, no one can run
Mhm.
at that speed. Um, and I think more and more parents are beginning to understand more about school choice and their educational options. Um, and I think that comes from podcasts such as your own that talk about it.
Mhm.
And um, I think that freedom right now has just been everything because as everything else in the world seems to change, our school systems are not. And as jobs are becoming more flexible and more families are looking for a flexible lifestyle, um, the school's rigidity is not keeping up.
Yeah, it's amazing how similar our story is because I was also that student that, I made B's and, I to the eye out there, I was a good enough student and I towed the line. I was a rule follower. Um, but I wanted to become a teacher because I thought, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to make a bigger impact than, what I had. And so I became a classroom teacher too. And literally within the first year, like you said, that was when I realized, wow, this kid over here needs this, and this family over here needs this. And I just couldn't, as much as I tried, to meet all of those needs because of the things you said, all of the policy that was coming down. Now, mind you, this was back when there wasn't even Common Core. There were state standards, but it was still like you have to be doing this, you can't veer off there, all that kind of stuff. And so when I decided to come home after we had kids, the same thing. It was like, you know what? I just don't think the kids can be in this situation either.
Mhm.
And so we had kind of decided way back when that we were going to go ahead and homeschool. But instead of going into administration like you did, it was actually more of a, we kind of had to because of quote unquote childcare. I went into becoming an adjunct professor. And so I would be home with the kids, homeschooling them in the morning. And then when my husband came home from work, that's when I left and I went and taught. But I was teaching teachers in the credentialing program. So I was still in that world. And again, it just broke my heart because there were so many talented men and women who wanted to make a difference and they just couldn't. So when they would start their student teaching, they would come and say, I love all these things you're sharing with us, these things you're teaching us. I understand they're going to learn math better this way or writing better this way, but I can't. My hands are tied. I have to use this curriculum. I can't get off track over here. And so, yeah, it's very interesting how very similar we were. But I will say that, the school system does have its flaws. But for some of the moms who are listening out there, there are a few kids where the traditional school system will work for them. However, like you said, I think a lot of the moms and families are realizing now, not the majority, and that there are better options out there. Okay,
Definitely.
so for the moms who are thinking about, I don't know about doing this homeschooling thing, it sounds great, but what about socialization? When is my kid gonna socialize and make friends? And like yourself, maybe they have a kid going into high school or high school age, and then they're thinking, well, this homeschool thing was great for now, but now they're in high school. And so don't they need to be around all of their peers. And so they put them into traditional high school just for that reason. And you address this beautifully in your book. So let's talk about that S word, shall we?
Sure.
There's a misconception that homeschooling leads to social isolation for children. And
Mm-hmm.
in your book, you share a variety of strategies to create a more vibrant school network for your kids. So, can you share some of those?
Sure. One thing I want to start with is
Hmm.
a hard conversation. And I think as parents, there is this period of time when children reach school age. And as a parent, you almost want to feel a mini burden lifted because there's all the books with babies and all the books with toddlers and how do we sleep train and what are we going to do to hit milestones. But at school age, I'm not I'm not certain why, but society has accepted this idea that the burden, the responsibility of an education is off of the parents, and that it's a shared responsibility with a school. And when people ask me the question on socialization, I come back to that thinking, and I just like to ask the question, if you choose to send your child to school, does that mean socialization is not the responsibility of the parent? Because I've never sat in a meeting in any district or school where administration and teachers would sit down and say, how are we going to build healthy socialization this year? because we were buried in a million other data points and metrics,
Mhm.
but never had that question or meeting ever occurred. We had safety meetings. In my last year, I had more meetings on an active shooter than I did on any other topic, but never on socialization. The idea that we send our children to school and they're socialized is very heavily based on proximity. Now, I've sat in the classroom myself, and I remember seating charts where, because I was a quiet student, I was always placed in the back next to a noisy student or right in the front next to a talker. And as I got older, I understood why. Okay, well, they're not, teachers are not going to intentionally set friends next to one
Right.
another. So they develop healthy social talking time. And I can't tell you how many times we've probably all heard, you need to be quiet. We're not here to socialize. Um, the classroom, yes, you will be around 25 plus peers your exact same age. But unfortunately, a lot of the socialization learned in that environment is also peer to peer. So it's young children, an 8-year old learning the social skills from another 8-year old, since again, we have that swing of um, not enough adults to model that in the space.
Mhm.
So I consider that side of socialization. And when we think through that and say, gosh, all parents are responsible for socializing their kids. Okay, so all parents. So what are we doing as parents, not just as homeschoolers, but what are we doing to socialize our kids? Well, we model good communication and we model healthy relationships. We put them in activities that they love around kids that have similar interests so they can grow in that interest together. We bring our children around our church environment, around youth groups, and around the morals and the moral compass most important to us.
Mhm.
And with all of these things, homeschoolers have more time to make healthy socialization choices and to introduce their children to more opportunities. So it's one of those questions that truly I receive daily across my platforms. Um, and it's interesting to me because it's typically being asked by someone, a lot of times very well intentioned. They're curious, they're concerned. Um, but for me, just looking at it from the perspective of all parents have this responsibility. This isn't something we're handing off. And then what are we doing and how can we make that better? The time, the realistic timelines of homeschoolers, it just makes it all the more vast and possible.
Yeah, it's same thing when I talk to moms and dads, I tell them you just have to be more intentional
Mhm,
with that because when they do go to a traditional school, they have in this built-in social hour. And sometimes it's not even an hour, right?
mhm,
um, and they're told when they can talk, where they can talk, sometimes even, like you said, who you can talk with because, where you're sitting and things like that. So, yes, when they do come home, especially when they're younger, you do need to be more intentional about that. But I often tell moms that actually socialization wasn't an issue for us and all of my friends and anybody and everybody that I've ever come in contact with all of these years. Often we were out of the house so much socializing, we hardly ever had time to get our quote unquote schoolwork done, right? And so that was never really an issue. And my husband, when he talks to parents, mostly dads at conventions, because the dads will come up to him and say, what about my kid's going to be weird, right? And he always tells me, he says, look, I can be anywhere and I could tell immediately if I'm talking to a homeschool kid or a homeschool graduate because they look me in the eye, they shake my head, they know how to carry on a conversation, they know how to read the room and know who they're talking to and kind of change and flow, ebb and flow with the conversation. So he said, actually, when I meet kids, homeschool kids actually are better, quote unquote, socialized because they've learned how to communicate and make friends and make lasting friendships in all situations with all types of people and of all ages, right? And I also tell moms, I said, actually, one of the things I loved about homeschooling was that I could help my kids foster friendships that I knew were good for them. And
Mhm.
the friendships that I thought, hmm, this doesn't look quite right.
Right.
I also had a whole lot more control
Mhm.
in the scheduling of my kids, especially when they were younger, with whom they played with and with whom they took activities with, right? So it works both ways.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's a wonderful way to, you go to park day and you meet this new family and you're like, oh, that kid has so much in common with my son. He's such a cool kid. And
Mhm.
either he or I would go and approach that family and be like, hey, can you guys, you want to go to the park, go to lunch, whatever. And we have so much more, like you said, responsibility
Absolutely.
in helping our kids make and foster these friendships. So yeah, socialization, it's not a problem. And like I
No,
said, your book,
it's not.
yeah, your book does a great job of discussing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. So another question we get, now we're on the other end of it, is parents will ask, will my kid be ready for college? Or if we homeschool high school, are they going to get into college, right? So in
Mhm.
your book, you highlight that while college is one path, it's not the only one. And I love that you brought that up. You didn't just say, yes, they're going to get into college and they're probably going to get academic scholarships. But
Mhm.
you also talked about, hey, wait, college may not be the path for every kid. And I love that you brought that up. So, as a former school principal, right? Because that's your job, get them ready for college.
Right.
How has your perspective on this evolved over time?
This is all this is all from my amazing husband. So my husband's professional path, his educational path is so different from my own. He's brilliant. He is so well read because he enjoys books. And even though similar to me, he went through the public school system, he was an athlete. He was badly injured in his high school years from playing football, and did not go on to receive that athletic scholarship he was kind of depending on, and did not go on to university as I think everyone thought that he would. Instead, he took some college classes that he felt like were very important in finance and
Mhm,
English,
mhm,
and became a successful self-driven entrepreneur. And the thing about it is we are so pushed in that systemic mindset of the next step is college, the next step is college. And for many, that's a beautiful choice, taking the next step in something you're passionate about. But for many others, the next step you're passionate about, you might not in 2026 need a degree for. And in fact, a better route in is to find an apprenticeship, an internship, a trade school, a job you're passionate about. There's so many different routes. And and so as we talked about taking that mindset of the early, okay, my kids of school age, at school age they go to school, at graduation they go to college. So instead we want to get out of that mindset and rethink education, and instead really think what is possible for my child. What would they like to see of the next years to come? So my daughter is only 14, but they're big conversations that we've already started. And I that's one of my favorite chapters right now in the book. I've just been coming back to it a lot as I'm a mom with a new teen
mhm,
in the
mhm.
home. And I my hope for that chapter is really parents opening that discussion with their kids, that what's next is can be such an exciting question because there isn't one path.
Mhm. Yeah, it's amazing. I love to hear that your husband is an entrepreneur because statistically, when you look at research, because now that homeschooling's been around for it seems like forever, but quite a few decades now, they've got quite a lot of research on homeschool graduates, and it's amazing how many homeschool graduates become entrepreneurs, right? So they go off and they invent new things, or they start their own companies, or they're just really good at seeing things that maybe traditional school kind of students don't see that that's an issue or a problem, or it could be done better. Because let's
Mhm.
face it, homeschool parents, we're kind of rebels at that anyway. We looked at the school system and said, I think this could be done a little better. So I feel like we kind of impart that onto our kids as well as they're growing. But it's amazing how many homeschool graduates look at the world and say, you know what? I see an issue here or a problem here, and I'm going to start a company or start a missionary or a mission kind of ministry thing to fill this need or fix this need. And it's just it's a beautiful thing. And I love how you brought up that you keep going back to that chapter, especially now that your daughter is 14, because that's actually where you should start when you've got an eighth grader or a ninth grader, is to plan backwards and to ask those important questions. What are your goals when you graduate? Because whatever they are, I'm going to help you get there. And if college, if whatever you want to do, you need a college degree for, and like you said, there aren't too many professions now where you actually need a college degree for, great. I'm going to
Mhm.
help you meet those goals. But if what you want to do doesn't really require a 4-year education at the university level, I'm going to help you meet those goals as well. And
Isn't
so, yeah,
that just the most perfect thing that you can develop their education based on their next goals? I just
hmm
love that. Mhm.
yep. And it's kind of funny because sometimes, a lot of times, you'll ask a 14-year-old, so what do you want to do post graduation? And you'll get, I don't know. But that's what makes homeschooling high school all the more fun, because
Mhm.
then you could give them so many opportunities with different classes and peoples and mentorships and jobs and all kind of stuff, and start taking college level classes to help them figure out, ooh, I like that, or oh no, I don't know what I want to do, but I know I don't want to do that.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
it's that gift of time again where they can start the apprenticeships, the internships now and really see, okay, how do I feel about this? Mhm.
yeah. I just love that chapter. All right, so because of time, let's move on to. I really love this chapter in your book because I feel like not a whole lot of homeschool books, resource books, kind of approach this topic. So you describe becoming your child's primary educator as exhilarating and humbling. I love that quote in your book. And you emphasize the importance of understanding your child's learning style, right? So what are some ways that parents can identify those learning styles at home? And even more so, how can they then meet their child's personalized learning needs? I know it's a loaded question, but hey, you wrote a whole chapter on it.
Sure, sure, absolutely. Um, I love how homeschooling allows you to personalize the entire experience, and you have the gift of time.
hmm
So it's not going to all happen overnight. In when I started homeschooling, and I'm actually doing the math, and we're in our fifth year. So, but it only feels like a few. It's how much we love it. Um, when we first started, this was a process for me because I had not ever been in the classroom setting with my girls. And I took it one day at a time just by spending the time with them through observation, through watching their progress, through watching what do they love, what lights them up, and what shuts them down. So, and it's very different. They are very different learners. One of my daughters can loves to learn through music, can use anything musical to learn. the other loves music cannot even have music on when learning. It just very different.
Mhm.
One's visual, one's more auditory. You watch, and every behavior is a signal. If something is shutting them down, there's a reason for it. And if something's lighting them up, how can I keep pulling that in? Because that's going to keep that spark ignited. So however they learn best, if you have a Lego builder and a Play-Doh molder, you might notice, okay, you know what? They really like doing things with their hands. How can I then bring that into learning? Well, maybe with math, it's less about, writing it on a whiteboard and more about building it out with Lego pieces, you know, because they need to see it, they need to feel it. So it takes time, and my hope is that this chapter gives the tools and ideas for you to just really sit back and enjoy the process of discovering their learning, because truly I discovered my teaching style and how I was going to match them by taking that time just to enjoy watching them and what they're drawn to and what they love.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because for me, that's one of the most important reasons when moms do pull their kids out of the traditional setting and they come home to spend time, quote unquote, deschooling,
Mm.
because that's the beauty of deschooling. So not only is the kid having a chance to just kind of maybe heal because there was some bullying going on or anxiety because of all of the pressures or whatever reason, right, that they're coming home. They have the downtime to kind of regroup and restore and that kind of stuff. But it's also a beautiful time for the parent and the kid to rediscover the love of learning. And it's a beautiful time for moms to kid watch, like you said. So now
Mm.
that they have all this free time, because that's another thing about deschooling is getting used to this new way of life, right?
So hard for me. It
Yes.
it really was. It really was. I am um, the picture perfect example of doing everything wrong in the beginning.
Hmm.
I mean, I had the planner color coded and filled out by the hour, and by 45 minutes in, I'm like, we're failing, we're behind, and somebody sneezed, and this, I had it so structured, I had lost sight that, okay, no, actually, we left the system not to bring it home to the
Right.
table.
Hmm.
And when I let that go, my next hurdle was, whoa, we got done all of the formal learning in less than an hour. Okay, what are we going to do? The thing I did wrong was start piling on more learning. And okay, I guess we'll just get ahead. Wow, homeschooling's great. And then again, it was the pressure cooker of recreating that part in our brain that tells us from our experiences what we think learning should look like or what
Hmm.
successful learning should look like. So, really, truly, that deschooling process is so important. And for some, including myself, it's ongoing. I still
Hmm.
find myself in small traps during the day saying, whoa, okay, sorry. That was a part of the old systemic side coming out. And same with my kids too. I watch them put a lot of pressure on themselves at first from being used to the timetable, from being used to was it graded? Mom, did you grade
Right.
it? So it takes time to shake that off.
Yeah. And like you said, it really is important too for the moms who are listening right now who are already homeschooling.
Mm.
And maybe they're not enjoying it. It's not very joyful right now. Or they're feeling overwhelmed. Often that's the time, like you said, that maybe they need to deschool again,
Yes. Hmm.
because that's probably the reason why they're burning out. Because, like you said, they're putting the expectation and the rituals and the routines and the schedules of traditional school in their home, which it doesn't work at home. It works in the classroom for the class management and got to get through this and the state testing and all that, but you don't really need to bring it home. And so when they start to, that's when the pressure, like you said, the pressure cooker gets turned on again. And so
Absolutely.
even moms who have been homeschooling forever,
Mm.
need to deschool and the kids need to deschool every now and then. So,
Absolutely. And we're human. There is a social culture right now around even what homeschool should look like. That
hmm
a
hmm
homeschool is peaceful and it starts with a morning basket, and a homeschool is on a farm. Oh my goodness, our homeschool on a farm was a nightmare. So I can just say homeschool on a farm's not for everyone. Or our homeschool, we're so far ahead. We have to shake that comparison trap too, because that's not even a part of the deschooling, but just the remember that your homeschool will not look like anyone else's, and your child will not look like anyone else's, and how they learn. And when we forget that, and when the learning and the homeschool becomes performance based or comparison based, is when in the past I've really felt myself, okay, I'm in a rut. Okay, so it just a mental check-in with yourself. Do I feel behind because of something happening in our home, or am I feeling behind because I'm comparing our home to someone else's?
You preach it, girl. I couldn't say it better myself. Love it. Because we all get stuck in that comparison trap
Mm,
more times than I care to admit. So
yes.
I can't believe, okay, we ran out of time. So you answered these questions and so, so many more in your new book, A Homeschool Bible. So tell the moms where they can follow you, how they can find you, and more importantly, how they can get their hands on your book.
Oh, amazing. Well, come to over to any of my social platforms. I'm Home Built Education, and I share just daily tips from the book and inspiration and encouragement, a lot like what we talked about today.
Mhm.
You can visit thehomeschoolbible.com to learn more about the book and order on Amazon, Christian Book, Barnes& and Noble, Target. It's everywhere.
I love it. And I hope the moms get their hands on it. If anything, just because it's absolutely beautiful. I haven't seen a homeschool book look like this ever, actually. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I'm actually going to be doing a giveaway on Instagram at Coffee with Carrie Consultant. So when this drops, after the moms are listening to this, if you want to try and maybe win the free Homeschool Bible by Mandy, then make sure you go to my Instagram account and I'll have a little giveaway thing there so that you guys can try and do that. So I always end with this question. So before you leave me, you know, the roles of homeschooling parent can be very overwhelming, as you know. Teacher, caregiver, parent, cook, coach, you name it. We have to do it all. So for someone just starting out, and feeling daunted by all of those titles, what piece of advice can you give them as they now begin to add another title, home educator?
Sure. Just be mom. Mom, as mom, you were given these children by God to raise, to teach, to give your heart to, and you are the most equipped person to do that. So just be mom.
Again, amen. Preach it, sister. I love that answer. So, you guys, if you're not already following Mandy, go do that at Home Built Education at Instagram, her website. Get her book. You're gonna love it. And Mandy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Thank you for having me.